live stream's coming up. One second.
Okay.
I'm going to mute, so.
All right. Okay.
You're good to go.
Ready to go. All right. So welcome everybody to the December 3rd, 2020 meeting of the CB6 Strategic Community Planning Committee. Hopefully you guys all got the memo that that's the committee you're in now. My name is Kavitha Matthew. I'm the chair of the committee. This meeting is called to order at 7:01 p.m. And tonight we're joined by Assistant District Manager Cody Osterman. I think we have some members of the public tonight, right? So members.
There are 5.
Okay, great. Members of the public, you can raise any questions or comments that you have through the Q&A feature of Zoom. If there's time following the committee's discussion, we'll field questions from the public. And we need a volunteer to take minutes tonight. Wells, I know you volunteered, but I'm going to look for someone else. I'm looking around the room. No.
I did last month.
Yeah, I know, Sandy. You're anyone else? Just because I've done a bunch too. If not, Jim, you're talking, but I can't hear what you're saying.
I say I did them in September. I had actually volunteered, and then Cody reminded me that I had done them in September. I'm trying to cover all my committees early in the month, early in the new year.
I can do it, but I can't take notes during the meeting. So I can do it if I can do it off the video transcript of the meeting.
If you don't mind, that's fine, I think.
Yeah, I don't mind.
That's actually the best
just have
way.
to watch it all over again then, Rich.
Okay.
That's great. Okay.
Oh no, these meetings are so much fun. I could watch it 5 times.
No, you know what you do? You cast it to your TV and draft while you're watching the notes.
Oh my goodness.
Watching the video.
Yeah, let's not do that.
Well, I did.
Rich Mintz will be taking the minutes tonight. Thank you so much, Rich. And now we'll take attendance by roll call, and Cody will conduct the roll call.
Okay, committee members, I will call your name. Please unmute yourself and say present if you are here. Kavitha Matthew.
Here.
Wells McGowan.
Here.
Azia Bobby.
Here.
Jim Collins.
Yep.
Sandy McKee.
Here.
Rich Mintz.
Here.
Lou Sapersky. Letty Simon.
Here.
Glenn Vanderbilt.
Here.
Claude L. Winfield.
Present.
Oh, I'll skip Sandra. Sandra Sherrod. Sandy. Okay, that's 10 members present.
Okay, thanks, Cody. So the agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office and will appear momentarily on the screen before you. Okay. Great, thank you. If there's no objection, we will adopt the agenda as stated. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting the agenda, you may raise your hand through Zoom. And seeing no objections, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. Now, the meetings from the November 5th meeting were distributed ahead of time by the board office as well. If there's no objection, we will adopt these. My echo, so someone has to mute themselves. Okay, thank you. And same goes for this. If you object, you may raise your hand through Zoom. All right, great. Seeing no objections, the minutes are also adopted. The November 5th minutes are adopted, and they will soon be available on the CB6 website. All right, now I'm going to just go through our usual ground rules. I think we have some additional attendees, so I'll run through all of them quickly. No one may speak until granted. In order to conduct an efficient meeting, let's observe a few ground rules. No one may speak until granted the floor. Committee members, if you have a question about committee business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand through Zoom. And you guys all know how to do that. The chat function should not be used for committee business. When a committee member is given the floor to speak, I will identify you. You can unmute yourself so that you can speak. And we're required by executive order to create a verbatim transcript of the meeting. So please keep your questions and comments succinct and germane to the discussion. All right, thanks everybody. So tonight we're really excited to have a presentation by one of our illustrious members, Claude, who is going to talk about the history of affordable housing in Community District 6. This is something that we have been hoping to do. I hope that there's some folks joining from other committees as well to hear all this good information, but I think it'll help us in our planning process. Claude, whenever you're ready, you can take it away.
Okay. I don't know who volunteered me, but I'll gladly do this. I'm going to try to keep it as simple as possible, because when you get into affordable housing, it gets confusing, and everybody tells you, I don't know what affordable housing is, when there are definite definitions for affordable housing at all categories. The first thing we need to do is recognize where our community board is. So we cover 14th Street to 59th Street, Lexington Avenue to the river. That's very significant going back a few years, because this area used to be primarily a manufacturing area and what people used to call Tin Pan Alley with the hospitals.
Bedpan Alley.
Huh?
Bedpan Alley.
Yeah, Bedpan Alley, yeah.
Tin Pan Alley is
I'm
the
sorry,
over on
that's over
27th
on the
Street.
west side, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm getting old. I got to remember what I got to remember what I don't remember. One of the first developments to come along in our area that was significant was around 1947, which was Stuyvesant Town. I'm not going to go into the history of Stuyvesant Town, but I'm just telling you that was one of the first major developments in our area. If you want to go back to that area, then you need to talk to Lou. But from Stuyvesant Town, we had a number of what we call urban developments, urban renewal projects that went on in this area. Just imagine all of this area as being tenements, and the 3rd Avenue on the west running the 3rd Avenue L, and all of the rest manufacturing going over to the river. We had a number of urban developments come in. One was from 23rd Street to 30th Street, 7 blocks. And that was the Bellevue South Urban Renewal. That's another project that if you want to know about, you ask Lou, not me. Ask
29th
Lou.
Street, 23rd to 29th.
Well, they say 30th Street, but that's all right. See, I said ask Lou.
Yeah, the north side of 29th, the south side of 30th was left.
Okay, let me finish, Lou.
Yeah,
I don't want to take too long.
Sorry.
But anyway, Lou has the drawings, you know, the original drawings, so you can ask him about that kind of stuff. Then the other major one that came in was above that, which went from 30th Street to 33rd Street, which was the NYU Urban Renewal, Title I, which is where Kips Bay Plaza is. So that covered 3 blocks. So just imagine all of this shifting in our community. Our community didn't look anything the way it looks now, because all of these are major developments that took place. And east of that, at one point, Mitchell Lama started building. And Waterside Plaza was built, but it was built out on the docks. And Richard Ravitch negotiated a 99-year lease for Waterside Plaza, which he just recently renewed. He extended it. It ran about 40 some years or so, and he's renewed it to another 99 years. So all of this development was going on. Now, another major area in our community, which hasn't been developed yet, but is as big as the other ones, is the Solo site, which is east of all of the other ones that I just mentioned. So just think of it as if this was like an open land for grab. So now what happens? you have major developers that want to come in and build, do construction. Okay, so I'm going to give you an example of the people that have built in our community. 14th Street to 59th Street. Fisher Brothers, Solo, J.D. Stern, the Toll Brothers, S&L Green, Rose Associates, and Tishman Speyer. Now, those are the ones that are really out for profit. But then you have other developers that are kind of non-profit that have a commitment to doing affordable housing. That's Phipps. I include one that's really not in our community, but right next to it because we are affected by what they did, and that is Breaking Ground. And then you have Monadnock, who did the micro unit, and you have New Destiny Housing, which did one of the first buildings that we call that are built in conjunction with those major builders. What the major builders would do is take any one of those people that I named, they will make a combination and all invest and do the primary mortgaging to do a development. And then simultaneously, they will build affordable housing, small units adjacent to the bigger units. Those are called, those units develop what we call compensated square footage. And one of the first ones that was built in our community was built at 307 East 54th Street. It only had 8 apartments in it, 4 studios and 4 one-bedrooms. And it was built for seniors, and it was built for a building around the corner practically. I can't remember the number, something like 333 3rd Avenue. That's where you get your compensated square footage. I'll go into that in a little detail later. And then you have developers that are kind of in the middle. You have the for-profit and you have the non-profit developers. And then you have developers that are right in the middle that kind of do both. And the major one in our community was called Atlantic Development. The founders of that was Peter Fine and let me see, what was his name? Mark Alheim. They developed Atlantic Development. They built a lot of that compensated square footage buildings, kind of buildings. And I'll get into that in a minute. Now, in our community, we like to think that we didn't have very much affordable housing. But I got news for you. We had tons of affordable housing in our community. We had a huge amount of Mitchell Llama in our community. And Mitchell Llama, I think, was first started being built in the 1950s. So we had in our community, Phipps houses, Mitchell Llama. Cody, can you show them the picture of Phipps? Is Cody there?
Yeah, one moment.
Okay, Phipps, you see there's Bellevue South Park. Phipps houses is between 1st and 2nd Avenue, and it runs from like 25th Street to like 29th Street, I believe. And Phipps ran its time for a long time. It stayed Mitchell Llama. Mitchell Llama was by law limited to the amount of profit it could make. It was called limited profit. They could not make more than 6% profit. And so anybody that was in Mitchell-Lama at some point was obviously going to get out. And after about 25 years, they raised it to 7.5%. But Phipps was built on that urban renewal, Bellevue South urban renewal site. That's where Phipps went. I'm trying to connect it so you can see where stuff went, okay? After Phipps, there was Waterside Plaza. That's off 23rd Street. If you can see it on the river, that was built to build Waterside Plaza, and it was leased to Dick Ravage for $1 for 99 years. He just renewed that contract with the city, and that was Mitchell-Lama for quite a while, for about 20 some years. It was Mitchell-Lama. When Dick Ravage decided that he wanted to get out of Mitchell-Lama, he did a pretty hard negotiating with the city, because what he was going to do was he was going to claim that part of Waterside was built after 1974 and part of it was built before. And so if they didn't kind of give him what he wanted, he was going to make the other part go straight to market rate and not go to rent stabilization. Anything prior to 1974, when you go out, it becomes rent stabilized. That's the second Mitchell-Lama site, large site. Waterside, Phipps Plaza. Then you have a couple of buildings that you would not normally recognize as either having been Mitchell-Lama or being under something a little bit different, but I'll go to the Mitchell-Lama one. If you go to 23rd Street, right on the corner, where the school is, the building above the school, that was a Mitchell-Lama building, Cooper Gramercy. You know, all know it, that's where the bus stop is. It has the gates around it. That was a Mitchell-Lama building. We didn't think so because the people used to come out and hail taxi cabs all the time, and they had a doorman. We didn't know that was a Mitchell-Lama building until they decided to go out of Mitchell-Lama. That's when we discovered it was Mitchell-Lama. Then you have a couple of unique buildings. I see it on the map already. It says Enstrada. That's 22nd Street and 23rd Street on 3rd Avenue. It's a gray building, grayish, greenish building, and it's right above the Vintage thrift shop. Everybody know where the Vintage thrift shop is? That is not a Mitchell-Lama building, but it was a building that belonged to Mount Sinai Beth Israel. And the president lived in that building. The president of Beth Israel lived in that building. That was a building for their employees. And so that was at affordable rent for the employees of Mount Sinai. And then if you go down to Mount Sinai, Pearlman Place, and where Pearlman Place runs into 15th Street, you have the Booth houses. It's 318 East 15th Street. That's a classified building, classified H8. H8 means dormitory, but that was a building that was for the workers that worked for Downtown Hospital, New York Downtown Hospital. Now, what is this to say? When I came on the board in 2000, all of these houses were opting out of Mitchell-Lama or out of the arrangements that they had as dormitories or affordable housing for their employees. That meant that we had a large amount of possible turnover. And the question was being raised, where do these people go and how do we keep them in our community? That was the reason why I came onto the board. At the time, we did not have a housing committee. And I came on the board to focus on that. How did I know about it? I lived in Waterside Plaza when it first opened, so I was aware of the Mitchell Lama circumstances. Now, I left out one. There's one other major Mitchell Lama that is still Mitchell Lama today. Hasn't opted out, but a lot of its tenants are trying desperately to get out of Mitchell Lama, and that's East Midtown Plaza. That's where I live, right on 23rd Street to 25th Street, 2nd Avenue to 1st Avenue. We take up that whole plaza area. The reason why we haven't gone out as quickly as the others is because they were rental. We are a co-op. That means we decide whether we go out. We have to vote to go out. In the other circumstances, the developer or the owner decided to opt out. But in our case, we have not been able to get a vote large enough to allow us to go out. So some people want to stay, some people want to go out, and some people want to make a lot of money. If you go out in this community and become a market rate building, you can imagine what some of those apartments would go for. And it was nothing like when we moved in. When we moved from Waterside Plaza to East Midtown Plaza, I think the payment was like $5,000. You couldn't get a doorknob in here now at that rate. But that's what it was when we moved in. At that time, it was a lot of housing for dental students, right where the dental school is. A lot of their students lived in our northern part of the East Midtown Plaza, in the building where I live, which is the duplexes. They had a lot of students living here. Okay, so now you have an overall picture. This was an area which was primarily manufacturing. There were several major urban renewals. Then there was Mitchell Lama that came in. And at one point around the year 2000, a lot of those buildings decided to opt out of Mitchell Lama. So we were losing a large share of what was our affordable housing in this community. Now, we did have other things. We had things like Strauss House and 388 East, 344 East 28th Street, which is not a house, not a NYCHA building. It's a New York State building, but New York State abandoned it, and so NYCHA took over running it. So now, what happened? From 59th Street coming down to 14th Street, developers decided to develop this whole area. And they really started north, the north part of our district, and they worked their way down. As you can see now, they're beginning to develop heavily around 33rd, 23rd, and now down to 14th Street. But they started up in the 50s and they began to work their way down. What did they target? Well, look at all of the corner lots as you come down our community. Look on the corners. Today you will see 33rd Street being developed on the corners. You'll see 23rd Street being developed on the corners. The developers picked all of those corner lots and began to develop them. Now, there are a lot of acronyms that go with affordable housing and housing in general, just tons. You can get lost in it, a myriad of all of these things. HUD, HDC, HPD. Then there are all of the statutes which allow the developers to build under. 202, some of the architects will notice, 232, 236. 202 is a prominent one for us. That's senior housing. So if a developer is going to do senior housing, they're building under the statute 202, okay? Now, what was primary in our area and what I focused on a lot is what we call 421A. There's a companion statute that goes with 421A, which no one hardly ever cites, 420C, which goes right along with 421A. 420C is a conglomeration of the developers, private, but it must have a major part of it must be a nonprofit, 501c3, or a charitable organization. They must represent 50% of that organization. And they must own or lease that property for 30 years. So what kind of building would that be? It could be like the Kenmore. It could be some supportive housing. It could be something that a church might build, okay? And I'm trying to think off the top of my head, do we have one like that? But anyway, let me go through what 421A was for our community. A developer comes in and they want to build in our community. Now you remember our boundaries are 14th Street to 59th Street. Under 421A, there was a geographic exclusionary area, GEA. In Manhattan, GEA was from 14th Street to 96th Street. What did that allow a developer to do? Some of these for-profit developers that we were talking about, like Solar, Fisher Brothers, what did it allow them to do? It allowed them to build in the South Bronx, in Queens, in the outer boroughs, affordable housing. And the ratio comes out to be approximately for every one affordable unit you build in the outer boroughs, you could build 4 units in our geographic area, geographic exclusion area. But you're not building affordable housing. You're building condos and co-ops. So all of the affordable housing is being built in the outer boroughs, in the South Bronx, in Queens. So if I built a building of 25 units in the South Bronx, how many condos could I put up on 59th Street? 4 times. So I could build a building with 100 units of condos and co-ops in that geographic exclusionary area. So what did I look at when I came on the board? I said, I don't know. I don't see any affordable housing. Where's the affordable housing in our area? And then I realized exclusion meant exactly what it meant. Exclusion, excluding affordable housing. So we were getting all of the condos and the co-ops. The South Bronx and Queens were getting the affordable housing. Those were what we call certificates. In those days, a developer could buy certificates. Of course, they were building it themselves. They were buying the certificates from themselves. But they could build and they could buy the certificates, and that would allow them to build all of those buildings that you now see going up 2nd Avenue, okay? And where we had those empty lots, and now this is going beyond the urban renewal, where we had empty lots, gas stations, flea markets. You would see people having those flea markets for 4 years, 3 years, 6 years. Those lots belonged to developers. They were just leasing it to the flea markets, because under 421A, if you leave the land fallow for 3 years, and then you come in and build on top of it, you get a tax rebate, and you don't pay taxes on the final structure. You pay taxes. You don't pay taxes only on the land, not on the land and the building once you're finished. And you had a window where you didn't have to report the 421A until after the construction is finished. So we had all of this building going on. We were generating a lot of condos and co-ops and no affordable housing. And how do we take a look at that? Well, within the 421A law, it requires hearings. Now, I don't know if Lou remembers this, but we used to perfunctory just say, we disagree with giving the builder the tax abatement. That was our resolution. And I said, no, let's have the hearings. Let's have them come in and tell us what they're going to do. Have them come in and tell us what they're building, what they're putting in the building, where it's going to go. Do we have any say in it? And out of that, a lot of the community boards at that time were taking a closer look at 421A and were raising questions about affordability being in our own communities. If it's in our community, where they did put some in, it being spread throughout the building, not just on the first and second floor, not in a particular line, just the H line, not just studios and 1 bedrooms. This is what we were getting. But studios, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedrooms. And so when we changed the 421A law, we incorporated all of those things and we included what we call permanent affordability. That means when you come in with those units, they have to stay designated as affordable, and that when somebody moves out, it starts at that rate, but it can only go up like rent stabilization by the rent guideline boards. Could not go to market rate. That was important. Could not go to market rate. Had to stay as rent stabilization. Matter of fact, this is why we have some problems nowadays, is because a lot of the developers didn't register the apartments. And so, you know, they go in open market. So you have 202, and I'll give you an example of 202. I'm trying to do this as fast as I can, as much as I can remember. You have 202, which is senior housing. I'll give you a prime example, and I guess a lot of you may know it. It's Cabrini House on 19th Street. That's senior housing built under the statute of 202. That was a major thing for us to get that built. And the day that we opened it, we had a waiting list. It was filled to capacity. Then you had the Kenmore, which was a dilapidated hotel, and private entities came in and renovated it. They didn't make it completely affordable. So it was partly hotel and partly living quarters, but it came under New York State, which is called supportive housing. And that is what we call New York 1, New York 2, and now present day New York 3. That's the state structure for doing a supportive housing. And you'll find a lot of people like Breaking Ground and those other groups doing that kind of housing. It provides services for whoever lives in those buildings. Breaking Ground has a major one that's right next to us. It's called the Prince George. Many of you probably know the Prince George. That's their major construction, but they're getting ready to do another one. They're getting ready to do a major one, the Breaking Ground. Then there's Section 8. And the only thing I'll say about Section 8 is there are some cases where Section 8 doesn't just go with the tenant. There are Section 8 project-based buildings We have one in our community. That's the Renwick. I believe that's on like 29th Street. And they can be Section 8 for, they just renewed about maybe 5 years ago or 10 years ago. They usually renew for like 20 years, and that keeps it affordable also. Now, given all of these things that I've cited to you, I didn't take the most important thing, which we have no control over, which determines a lot about affordability. And it's just too much for me to go through, but I'll gloss over it. And if you have a question, maybe I can answer it. And that is AMI. Okay. And the federal government determines the AMI. And that is the area median income. Area median income is a number that's based on your community. Unfortunately for us, they include in our area median income Westchester. And so it raises ours much higher than it would be if we were only looking at New York City, because we're included what they call a metropolitan area. So that's the basis of our AMI. Now, when I came on the board, there was a building that was being built, in 2000, called the Metropolitan. And that's 150 East 44th Street. That's around the corner from where the drop-in center used to be at St. Agnes Church. That's how I knew about it. And I saw it in the New York Times. And I said, oh my God, they have apartments on 44th Street this cheap? I can't believe it. How do you get one of these apartments? Well, that was not a 421A building. That was under one that I had very little to do with or know about, but it's called an 80-20 building. All of these are bonding mechanisms. So in an 80-20 building, 80% of the apartments are at 80% AMI, and it goes up to an income, at that time, talking about 2000, goes up to an income of about $60,000. 20% was at AMI of 50% and went up to an income of approximately 32,000. So if you know what 50%, then you know what the AMI was at that time. Just double it. So think about that now. The AMI for New York in around 2000 was like $64,000, $65,000, $68,000. You know what it is today? The AMI is around $102,000, $107,000. That's a big jump. Because that's how you decide what is affordable. You have your AMI, and the developer will build with 421A at 60% of AMI. Now, when we say 60%, that doesn't mean all of the apartments are at 60%. It means it goes up to that level. And then beyond that, there's a certain portion of the apartments that cover that area. And then beyond that, there's a certain part that may cover 60% or may go up to 120%. Okay? And some of those are like the American Copper building, which is the southern part of the Solo site. Solo sold off the part of his property because he wasn't planning on developing it anytime soon. So he sold it to J.D. Stern. J.D. Stern came in and built the American Copper building right there where the school is, PS 281. That school is on that same tax property. That's where we lost a lot of affordable housing. Because one of the unique things about having the developer build a community facility for you, and it gets the school built quicker, because he built it real quick for us. But a lot of people don't realize that when you have the developer build the site for you on that same tax property where you're putting your building, where he's putting his building, we only get credit for the first floor of square footage. So when you're factoring out how many affordable units you're going to get, you lose all of the square footage above the first floor. So that building is like 4 stories. So we lost 3 stories of square footage that would have gone towards affordable housing on the solo side. You follow? Everybody following it? Okay. That was negotiated by our former council member, Daniel Garotnik. Ed Rubin and him got into some stuff about that because we had laid out one design for everything, the school. We had actually had the school in the middle of the 2 buildings. Dan Garotnik kind of negotiated it and changed it all around and put the school on First Avenue. So anyway, you have Mitchell Armor, you have those major development sites, which are urban renewal. You have Stuyvesant and Peter Cooper, which you cannot say is affordable anymore. The thing is that you have to recognize the categories that exist. There's very low, there's low, there's moderate, there's middle. A developer can develop in any one of those categories. They choose how they want to develop those properties. If you go through the city, after you've done your primary mortgaging with the banks and your other developers, and you want a secondary subsidy from the city, then you can go through what we used to call LAMP, L-A-M-P, and that is called Low Income Affordable Market Program, LAMP. Now, Cody, can you go real quick to HDC's website and click on Manhattan Borough?
One moment.
While he's doing that,
HDC.
Claude, I think, Jim, did you have a question that you want to ask now, or you want to wait till the end?
Click on Manhattan.
Muted. We can wait. You can just wait.
Can you get to the borough of Manhattan? It shows the list. I just want to show them the list of all of the buildings.
Okay, so you're looking for the buildings that are being.
Yeah, there. You see all of those buildings? Those are all buildings that are, well, that's not the list that I wanted. Yeah, that's all right. It shows it. You see where it says LAMP down there? Yeah, right there, LAMP, etc. These are all of the acronyms that I was talking about. But this is the one that means that they probably went through the city of New York for a secondary subsidy. And that is meaning that they would have to have low income affordable housing in those buildings. This website is there. Anybody looking for affordable housing can go to this website. You will see some say accepting applications. You will see some that says complete waiting list. But all of these buildings are there throughout the city that tells you the apartments, the number of apartments, at what rate, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? Now, LAMP doesn't exist anymore now that I've told you about it. HPD changed to what they call ELA. I think Karine probably knows what ELA is. Extremely low, / low income, affordable program, ELA. A developer can take a secondary mortgage with the city. That means he's committing to affordable housing. They can get up to, it varies, they can get up to like $55,000 per unit in mortgaging. Some have limits where you cannot go past $15 million, but they can take that secondary mortgaging from the city. The micro units in our board is an ELA building. They built 55 apartments. Rosie Mendez was very crucial in the development of that building. Rosie and I worked on that building with the developer day in and day out, because they came, Monadnock, they came and they did a presentation before us, and they said, we're gonna build some affordable housing. And we're gonna go from 80% AMI to 145% AMI. And I said, not in this district. I said 145% AMI to me is not affordable. So I don't see that. And we worked on that. We got 11 apartments that were affordable. We got 8 apartments that were for veterans only. And some of those apartments went down to 30% AMI. What I did was cost it out over the time. Now, what I didn't tell you was that all of these developers, when they do the 421A, they get a tax abatement. And that's where the board comes in. You are advisory, but you can approve, you can say I approve or I disapprove of them getting the tax abatement. But unfortunately, past history says HPD approves it anyway, no matter what we do, basically. But it gave the developers a lot of concern when we used to have them come in. They really did. They worried about it. But they got a tax abatement. In some cases, this is real. I can walk you around the community and show you the buildings where the tax abatement, some tax abatements are for 10 years, 15 years, 25 years, and some 30 years. There are some buildings where if you had an apartment and you had a tax abatement, approximately half the tax liability for that developer was not actuated until after like 13 years, okay? The first 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, you didn't pay anything. And then it slowly kicks in until you reach the maximum. Now, what did this say to a person that bought an apartment? Right there on 23rd Street, we had a building where most of those apartments were being bought by foreign investment, LLCs, and then they were renting them out. But they were getting tax abatements. Their maintenances were in some cases cut by half. So if you had a $33,400 maintenance, you're only paying like $1,700. But that didn't mean that the person that owned it, the LLC, wasn't charging the person that was renting it the maximum maintenance. So there was a lot of money going around. Now, did we have affordable housing? Yes, we had affordable housing. Did we lose a lot of our affordable housing? Yes. There's one last category of affordable housing that I want to tell you about, because I know you'll walk around the community and you wouldn't even know it was there. For example, 400 3rd Avenue, that was built by Atlantic Development. 385 3rd Avenue, same thing. And then there's a whole host of buildings that were built either for like seniors, elderly, and they're run today by the Metropolitan Jewish Council. And they're in our community. One of my most disheartening things was that when we were losing all of this Mitchell-Lormer housing and people were being kind of kicked out of Stuyvesant Town, we couldn't get the elderly people to apply for the housing that I'm about to tell you about. They would allow other people from outside our district to come and take the apartments. They preferred to stay in Stuyvesant Town and pay half their income in Stuyvesant Town. We would tell them about it and they wouldn't apply. So what are some of the locations? Listen, because they're interesting. And all of these were built in like 2009. 385 3rd Avenue, which I said. 228 East 46th Street. 332 East 22nd Street. 171 Lexington Avenue. Those are the primary ones in our area, and 141, the one right next to Kenmore. Those are all run by the Metropolitan Jewish Council. And those are affordable housing units. And you would walk right by them and not know that they were affordable housing units. And especially the one that's right across from Baruch Junior High School. There's a building right across from Baruch Junior High School that is affordable housing building. What's the interesting thing about those buildings? Those are the buildings that generated that extra square footage for the developers. So whatever the livable square footage that you built in those buildings, you multiply that by 4, and then someone like Solo or someone like Toll could buy that square footage and add it to their building. Now, of course, the LLCs that were building that was part of their companies too. Here's the last one, because this is a unique building. And this tells you what you should be looking for in terms of who might not be registering their apartments. This is an example. Notorious for me are the Toll brothers, because they buy properties that originally may be scheduled to be rentals, and then they turn them into condos, or they turn them into what they call, I don't really know the name of it, condo codes or something. But what it is it's a building that has condos, and somebody may have brought up a number of those apartments and they turn them into co-ops within the condo building, and they're renting them. But those apartments may have come in under 421A. Okay? Those are the ones that are most likely not registered, not going, when they go out, they don't become rent stabilized. Now, here's the interesting one. This is the last one, Cody. The address is 959 or 961 First Avenue. It's called the Sutton. Can you bring that up? Yeah, it's right next to a restaurant there. Can you get a picture of the building? That's it. That's it right there. Now, interesting fact. This is a condo building. You see where the first 4 or 5 floors, those are the affordable units in that condo building. When they originally sold, they sold from $250,000 to $463,000 condo units. 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th floor. And one was actually 5th and 6th floor. The apartments above it go all the way up to $6 million, $8 million. But these are affordable. So the question I had was, when they buy those affordable condos, what happens in 10 years when they sell them? They're not selling them at $400,000. They're going to sell them at the going rate in that building. This is where some of the lapses in all of our laws exist. There's so much to cover in this. You know what? I think I'll stop there. Oh, one other thing. Yeah, this is for your committee. Because in looking back at some things, I realized something. And I realized this is something that our consultants should have taken a look at. There was a project in Brooklyn uniquely similar to what's going on with Mount Sinai. Kings County Hospital, together with Church Avenue Merchant Business Association, developed what's called Canberra Housing Ventures. They developed property that belonged to HHC, and they built on it affordable housing, supportive housing, with all of the services of the hospital, mental health, et cetera, et cetera. That's in existence now. If you look, it's called Canberra Gardens. If you look at it, you'll get a good example of where a hospital came together with a community organization and built that kind of venue. And that's something that you should take a look at in terms of the development of Mount Sinai. If that something similar like that could be done. Okay, that's it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Claude. And I think Cody just put
My head is hurting.
Your head is hurting. Our heads are hurting too. That's a lot of information. And I'm thinking people probably have some questions because I think I do. But if there are any from committee members, just raise your hand or jump in if you want.
Do you want some additional background on some of the stuff, especially south of 34th Street, including but not limited to the Bellevue South Urban Renewal Area?
I don't know if we're going to go into a deep dive today. I want to kind of do it more of as an overview, but maybe we can have a follow-up, Lou, because I know you have a lot of information too on some of these sites.
This doesn't constitute deep dive. This constitutes overview, but supplemental to what Claude's done, which is a brilliant job. It's up to you. It's your.
All right, Lou, if you can keep it pretty brief, I think so. We can do something. You're on mute.
Lou, you have to unmute yourself.
You're still muted. Yeah.
Am I unmuted now?
Yes.
Good.
We can hear you.
There was, prior to the Bellevue South Urban Renewal Area, a project proposed called Gramercy North, and it was from 21st to 23rd, from 1st to 2nd, for reasons that aren't particularly germane here. That project failed, and Robert Moses proposed the Bellevue South Urban Renewal Area, 23rd to 29th. The 23rd to 29th includes a building for the elderly and an entire building for the elderly and disabled at modest or controlled rents called Renwick Gardens. It's on 29th Street. And that was also called Site 10. It was developed by the Site 10 Housing Alliance. At about the same time as this other activity was taking place, and if you want to see what the neighborhood was like at the start of this entire process, 25th Street between 2nd and 3rd Avenues, if you exclude the corner buildings, will give you a fairly strong sense of what the neighborhood looked like. In the Bellevue South area, there were a number of, as Claude mentioned, industrial buildings, industrial properties, including including textile printing, which was a big industry in the area. And those buildings were lost, and those businesses were lost to the urban renewal area. At the same time, there was a series of developments along 2nd Avenue. Tracy Towers at 24th and 2nd, new high-rise building. The Peter James, the Spruce Ridge at 25th Street and 2nd Avenue, and at the other end of 25th Street and 3rd Avenue, the Peter James, all high-rise market rate buildings happening at the same time as the Bellevue South urban renewal area was under development. Kips Bay was built in the very late 50s and was sort of the template for super blocks and set a tone for what was going to be happening. And I think we'll leave that there because there's a lot of other stuff that comes in. There was a church-owned property, a national parish-owned property on 24th Street.
That's right next to my building.
That's excluded from the urban renewal area, but was sold by the Archdiocese to a private developer after the fact.
Let me cut in a minute, Lou.
Yeah.
That is owned by Mount Sinai now.
Is it really?
That's a resident building for their nurses.
Yeah, that became a privately owned property for a while and was sold. New York Towers, which on 2nd Avenue from 24th to 25th, was purchased by private developers at the same time as the urban renewal area was being proposed. And there was supposedly some insider trading, but it became a privately owned development surrounded by the urban renewal area. It became extremely valuable. There was a couple of other involvements of the community at the time, but we'll leave it there. And as we go, we can pick up some of the other material.
Okay, that sounds great, Lou. You're talking about my neighborhood, so it's very interesting to me.
Let me go back and repeat something. If you want a fairly good idea of what the community looked like from 23rd to 29th, 1st to 3rd at the time, 25th Street between the high risers will show you what the residential community was like. There were low-rise walk-up buildings, very modest rents. 25th Street from 2nd to 3rd, according to the cops in the 13th precinct, at this time, and we're talking about the 1960s, was considered to be the worst block between 14th and 96th Street on Manhattan Island. And living there was considered to be sort of risky. It was sort of high-rise, high-risk neighborhood.
Did you live on that block, Lou?
As a matter of fact, yes. I had gotten out of the Army and was looking for, I was working in publishing and looking for low rent, and that was my neighborhood. That was my what I could afford. There's some colorful history that goes with that separately later on. There were one or two other things. Oh, Stuyvesant Town and Peter Cooper Village is a very readable book called To Stand and Fight about the early development, the early tenancy and the early residences of Stuyvesant and Cooper. It was built as a segregated community, and there was an enormous amount of pressure to integrate on the part of the residents. Some of the residents in Stuyvesant Town, aided and abetted by the American Veterans Committee. And the book is called To Stand and Fight. It's very much worth reading and gives you some color of the people and the forces at work. Metropolitan Life was adamantly opposed to integration, and that colored much of the neighborhood in the area. Anyhow, we'll leave it there.
Thank you so much,
Thanks for
Lou.
your time.
Thank you. So I have a couple of questions. Jim, did you still want to ask something? I see your hand still up. You're muted. Sorry.
I had several questions that I've sent on to Claude, and hopefully he and I can do a sidebar next week sometime. But I did have one comment. Claude mentioned that his building is co-op, and that now a lot of the tenants, or some of the tenants, want to sell out their apartment because of the profit availability. And I wanted to raise the issue. I like co-ops. I think co-ops are great because they give people a sense of ownership that renters tend not to have. But with a co-op on the west side over in Chelsea, you may or may not be familiar with it. It was created originally, I believe, by the International Ladies Garment Workers Union, the ILGWU. And what they do is they limit the profit that one can obtain upon disposing of the property when they sell it. So I think that's a very good model going forward, in my view. Unless Claude has some thoughts on it, I think that would be something that if we're looking at affordable housing for the district, I think that's a very good model.
Well, if we opt to go out, then anyone that is a co-op at the present date, if they do not want to be an open market co-op, then they can become rent stabilized. So they have that option of being rent stabilized. And usually the Attorney General will not approve it unless you account for all of those people. So there's a portion of our development that would probably opt that. That's probably the stage one of our development, which is primarily on 23rd Street. It was built in stages and built around that building that Lou was talking about, which is now belongs to Mount Sinai.
Well, I sent you an email, and look it over when you get a chance, and let's talk. Yeah, there's several points in there.
Okay, thanks, Jim, and thanks, Claude. I think we have a question from Sandy as well.
And sorry, let me turn on the video too. And I'm just wondering, are all the programs that you mentioned, I guess, except for Mitchell Lama, are they still in place and applicable?
You mean like Ella?
Yeah.
Yeah,
like what can developers use now to develop?
Ella's still in place. The thing about Ella is if you choose to do that, also there's funding from the federal government that kicks in. It's called low income housing tax credit. Automatically kicks in if you choose any of those programs. So that's why developers will do that. If they have that mindset of doing affordable housing, that automatically kicks in. It's LITHC.
ITHC. And so like the 421A is still active as an option?
That's an interesting question because, I haven't been doing the affordable housing, so I haven't been following it. But we changed that law, and I testified a number of times when we were changing that law to get all of those things that I was talking about, the variations throughout the building, the permanent affordability. Oh, interesting. I'm glad you brought it up. For us, we should be concerned about the Solo site. Solo just passed away. He was 92 years old. His son wanted to sell it a couple of years ago. It has special permits that exist on that site, and it has a certain amount of affordable housing that's supposed to be generated on that site. Now, that is what's called an inclusionary zone, which means that you don't do bonus. You don't do like park bonuses and stuff like that. On an inclusionary zone, it's automatic. When you build, you get an extra 30% that goes on top. And so it automatically goes up to like a 12 FAR. But the affordable housing has to be permanent. And it is permanent because you can't take the apartments off. You build them, they're there. So it's permanent. Solo is supposed to build that according to those permits. He's been pussyfooting around to try to avoid those permits. They were renewed. What he did do was he built the west side of his development, which is across the street, right there at 39th Street or something. I don't know. That black building.
Meyer building.
Black. Yeah, that building. But what he did do, and this is another way you get affordability, is that's the old R10 zoning. Under the old R10 zoning, a builder could build and build off-site or do preservation. And a lot of that preservation and the off-site building has to be within a half a mile within our community board. It has to be in our community board. And so what I suspect was that Solo did preservation and probably in Phipps Plaza North. When they had all of that renovation of Phipps Plaza North, they upgraded the apartments, they did the bathrooms over, they did, all of those different things. That's what a developer will do in terms of preservation. So you're preserving affordable housing that way.
And can we find out exactly what he did? Like, shouldn't that be something?
Well, I haven't done it in a long time, but the last time I went on HPD's website, they had a lot of stuff on there that I didn't know that they had on it. Like all of that stuff I was talking about, a compensated square footage. They have a whole list showing all of the people where that compensated square footage went to, where it was built and who it went to. 5 years ago, you couldn't find that.
So Corinne and Rich, is this something that you guys are following up with in the housing? Like you mentioned, you were doing some, you're muted, Rich, sorry.
Sorry. I was literally just writing a text to Corinne saying we needed to look into the Solo site because I'd forgotten. I mean, I saw that he passed away and I'd forgotten about this because I've been thinking about Mount Sinai. But we should both understand what the possibilities are for building there and talk to a land use person to make sure that we're not missing anything. Because it's going to be. There are
special permits that call for what do you call it? A dome? Like a theater thing. What do you call it?
Amphitheater.
An amphitheater. There is spacing for outdoor spacing and stuff. There's special permits, and on that site, he has probably the only building that could be built in our community board, which is a commercial building east of Lexington Avenue. That's part of what's supposed to be on that site, a commercial building.
So maybe if it's okay with you, Kavitha, I'll take responsibility for figuring out what the broad situation is, checking it with Claude, and then we can have a more directed conversation both in here and in housing.
You know how I like it when somebody takes responsibility for something.
Because I'm really
Thank
eager
you.
to see what we can do here.
Yeah, I am too. And we brought it up in land use. I think it's on everyone's radar. So we have to really be focused on that as well. Hang on, Lou, 1 second. I think, Anne, you had a question. You have your hand up.
Yeah, and thank you. I'm sorry, I'm not even a member of the committee, but Sandy suggested I might be interested in hearing the wisdom here. So thanks for letting me join in. I have my main question was really about how programs like SCREE, like the senior rent increase exemption and rent stabilization, how they fit into the whole picture of affordable housing in the kind of common usage sense of the word, if not the tense, not the technical sense. So I was just kind of curious about your thoughts on that.
Essentially what SCREE does, regardless of what your situation is, if you're over a certain age and within a certain income, your rent is frozen. That's the short of it. So even if you're in Mitchell-Lama, right? If you're over a certain age and you file for SCREE, and there's also DRE, which is disability, the same as the senior, you file for it. If you're below that income, your rent will be frozen at that rent.
I guess I just meant that, like, as we're looking at what the opportunities are and, kind of what our what we have in the community board, maybe we should be considering those kinds of items too, because they're, I don't know about street, but I know that, you know, rent stabilization, you know, I live in a rent stabilized apartment. When we moved into this building 27 years ago, almost all of the 64 apartments were rent stabilized. Now I think there's half a dozen. And I think that's really common. So when we're looking at kind of what our inventory is, and again, you know, it's not technically affordable housing, but it is what allows, you know, middle income people to live in the district. So I think it is relevant.
Well, over the years, those rent guideline increases of 2% add up because they're compounded on top of each other. Throw in a couple of MCIs, and that's how you come out of rent stabilization very easily by the time the tax abatement is over.
Not anymore, though.
Huh?
Not anymore.
No,
I fixed that.
I said I'm old.
All right, Lou, did you have something to ask? I know you had your hand up before.
Yeah, two things. The Solo site, the north end of it was, he wants to build an office building there. That involves the future of the Robert Moses Playground, 41st to 42nd on the east side of First Avenue. As a matter of fact.
Not really, Lou.
I'm sorry?
Not really.
That's where the commercial, where an office building for the UN is supposed to.
I know, but that doesn't have anything to do with Solo.
He wanted to build a commercial building on the south side of 41st on his site. And that's a source of some controversy at the time. And I was wondering if perhaps it would be a good idea to follow up and to find out what the intentions and planning are and what the pressures are for that site, because he may.
Commercial building is more southern than that site that you're citing, that location that you're citing. It's on the middle, almost the middle of the property.
Yeah, we ought to find out, ask the question at least to be sure that what's going on there, because he may have the same intention. There may be other steps that they're taking to accomplish the.
It's a good idea. I don't think that building is going to ever get built because the UN is never going to
can't
act on it.
Yeah, and the other is an add-on to a conversation. There is a new senior building opening at 56th Street and Lexington Avenue on the northeast corner. It's practically finished. I think it's going to be occupied early in 21. And do we have any read on how that's been built, and is that subsidized or is that market rate or what? But
well, that's something for Karine to look at.
Sorry?
What she should do is ask the board. All of those developers have to file with the board at some point what they're building, and some documents should come into the board office telling you what building is going up and what it is.
Yeah, that building's going to be inhabited in the next few months. It's for all practical purposes, it's finished, and I'd like to find out how that fits into supported housing for the elderly and disabled.
I believe this is just really expensive senior housing, if I remember correctly. And the only reason I really am aware of it is because transportation had a hearing on it because of like a loading bay or a bike lane.
Yes. And it's just crazy expensive. It's not affordable in any way.
So it's for rich seniors, I guess. That's what it is. Anne, you had your hand up again, or was that from before?
No, it is again. And I want to say, first of all, the whole deal with the UN, that was how, we were going to get our Esplanade, and I just don't think that's ever going to happen. The other thing that I just wanted to throw out there that I have mentioned in land use but I think it's relevant here is I think it kind of behooves us, and this is a strategic planning meeting, to think really outside the box too. There's a lot of commercial space in East Midtown that is currently, basically empty commercial space now that is zoned 100% commercial. Like there's, no way to put housing in there now. But, New York is tighter on, like, everyone's moving now, right? And the idea that maybe some of that space could make, mixed use, right? Like that's something we always are promoting. So I think I'm sorry, I know none of this is really a coherent statement of an idea, but I think we should consider kind of more broader ways to increase the availability of housing in our district.
No, I think that's a really good thought. And I think like looking at opportunities where we might not always, or we might just take things for granted is kind of part of the whole scheme of things. So I thank you guys so much, Claude and Lou, for your add-ons. I had a quick question. I don't want to take too long because I know everyone's getting tired and hasn't eaten probably, but a quick question for you, Claude, about, you mentioned that you were in Waterside and then you moved to East Midtown. And was that something that was like a lot of the residents did? Was that an opportunity that was afforded to you, or was that something that just?
The first years, Ravage was having problems getting people to move in.
Okay.
And he allowed us to have almost, I always get this wrong. My wife corrects me all the time. I think it was 6 months he allowed us no rent, basically, to get people to move in. And then at one point, you have to understand that Mitchell Lama has authorities over them. They're either state authorities or they're city authorities. And you cannot just, it's not done by rent guidelines board. You have to go through those entities to get rent raises. And so at one point, after he had got us all into the building, maybe after 3 years, I think maybe it was 3 years, I'm not sure, but he got approval for rent raises of 7.5%, 9%, and 9.5%. And that was when some people chose to move out. It was cold over there. You had to walk across a bridge and you got soaking wet before you could get across the bridge.
Yeah.
So that's what encouraged the move.
I see. Okay, we do have another question from a member of the public. We have Jen Sarah, and I don't know, Cody, if we can let her ask this live or if I should read it out.
1 second, I can enable her audio. There you go.
All right, Jen, you can go ahead and ask the question. I know there's a lot of parts to it, so I don't want to get it wrong.
Need to read this live. You can just read it yourself and enter it into the record. I don't know enough to really ask anything more than what I've asked here. So
okay.
I leave it to you guys. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much. So yeah, Jen, I guess you guys can see that, ask some questions about what Claude brought up, so we can address those later or look into those in more detail because there's a lot of points here. So I'm not going to get into it right now.
Yeah, that's something you should look into. She has a lot of things there.
Okay, well, thank you for that, Jen. If there's no other questions, Anne, are you asking another question? No. Your hand's still up. No. Okay. If there's no other questions.
Sorry.
Okay, no problem. We're going to move on to the rest of the agenda, which I'll try to condense a little bit. I do want to give the update on Problem in Place website and the task tracker that we've been working on for the last few weeks. The website is, has been live, but it's actually been announced in the newsletter a couple of days ago. I know I think things are maybe a little mixed up about how we were going to communicate on this. There was some we were going to do some outreach, and a couple of messages did go out. Thank you, Corinne. And I think Rich, you had done some outreach to community groups or stakeholders, but we're
Yes.
going to do a bunch more. And I think, Cody, do you mind if pulling up the website for a second and just running
Sure,
through?
one moment.
And maybe you could give us some stats on, since it's been published, like how much, if people have actually clicked on it or signed or done the survey. I don't know if you have that info handy.
Yes, the site doesn't have Google Analytics like our main
Right.
site does, but we do have some numbers based
Okay.
on the number of clicks that particular link got in our newsletter. And I have those. That was the number one clicked link in our newsletter this month, with 54 unique clicks. That's 20% of the total for the newsletter. In terms of people who've signed up for the dedicated From One Place newsletter, there were 3 before we announced this. Now there are 37, so that is a substantial increase. And I can poll people's answers to the questions that which do you think we need more of, and kind of share those around.
That's great. I
Pull up
mean,
the website.
oh, okay, great.
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just Cody, just a couple of things on, or whoever on the website. Do we have share buttons for social media like Facebook and Twitter so that this can get spread around a little more? And also, I tried to log on for the mobile portion of this, which I think is important, and it didn't seem to have the same level of functionality.
There's not currently any sort of social buttons, but those can be added. I can show you what it looks like on mobile.
It's been a couple of weeks since I checked it, so it might have been upgraded or what have you, but I didn't get the sense that it had the same level of functionality mobile.
This is kind of this is what it would look like if you went to the site on your iPhone, and instead of the top menu bar, you have one of these that generates the menu bar, and then it turns into a vertical scroll. So
I saw that.
You're right that probably the text on the map is not as legible on the mobile as it could be, but it also looks some spacing issues that can be addressed.
Yeah, we definitely, I mean, we still need to work on it some. We were trying to get it, just to a point where we could go live and continue to make these updates.
And I apologize, I've missed meetings. And are we live now to an extent where we can share it with schools and what have you?
We are, we're going to talk, that's exactly what we're going to talk about, because I think we are ready to start the outreach and make sure people see this and start signing up for it. And as Cody mentioned, people are actually signing up and filling out, there's a survey, that green button that you see in the kind of right middle of the screen that says sign up for the latest news. Takes you to something where people can enter their contact info, and also give kind of a little bit of a mini feedback about what they want to see in the community or in that site. So I think that's really helpful as we go forward, if we can get a lot more of that. That's our kind of next step here. And I wanted to talk to all of you just in a general sense about kind of a more several month plan looking ahead for the next few meetings, and trying to plan for something that's, I think this info session today with Claude was so very interesting. And I'm thinking if we had something kind of as a condensed version of that for like the general public about the history of what's happened, to things like affordable housing in the community, or what's happening to our healthcare services in the community, and potentially did this as a joint effort with other committees, down the road. I think setting it up for people to weigh in on what they'd like to see, it's helpful to know, what's been there and what's changed in the community rather than just putting it out. So I'll take some, I'm happy to hear thoughts, but I think if we can target to have some kind of like panel discussion on that, maybe a couple of meetings out, say February, and then more of a community engagement effort in the next couple of months after that in the spring. I think that would be really good, because I know even with the second wave of the pandemic, I am quite sure that MSBI is looking at their real estate options pretty, I don't think their real estate people have put on scrubs and started treating patients. I think they're still definitely strategizing about what's the best option there. So things are going to move ahead, and I just don't want us to be behind on that type of outreach. So any thoughts from committee members on that, in terms of?
It might be better to do it as a PowerPoint presentation and just, post it up as part of the website with audio. With audio.
Have like a little video, kind of like a
yeah, you can create a video off of PowerPoint and just, narrate it.
That's an interesting.
And that'll be essentially a video. You may have to host it. Host it on YouTube and then just have a link in the website.
Maybe we should invite them back again now that we have some people who are interested in the website, and use that as a way to sort of spur some more discussion.
Invite.
And that I think because we do tape all of our meetings, those are being put up on the website, are they? Do we have a way to do that?
But Sandy, you meant invite who, MSBI?
Invite the MSBI.
Yes, definitely.
Brads.
So, yeah, the Brads. I thought maybe it would be interesting, and I don't know if they'd be ready for this, to have MSBI be on a panel with others, like with, give the update on what they think is happening, but also have, I don't know if it's elected officials or community organizations or people that we think, would have some more insight on the community. If we had a broader panel of people with different perspectives, it might be nice to have something like that to launch over the next couple of months. And that's what I was kind of toying with, that idea. Rich, I know you reached out to like Open New York, and it's just interesting to see these groups that are working on pushing for more affordable housing or other services.
And Open New York is absolutely ready to work alongside us in any way that we would like them to.
So maybe that's a good idea. It could be that we do that as a kind of an open discussion with them. So it's just, how do we go about doing this? Make it really not confrontational. Just
right.
Here's some community people who all have the same ideas.
Right, and we know that there's challenges, but that way we could kind of start bringing those to light. I think that would be good. But I do like the idea also. I do like Jim's idea of maybe having some info thing, whether it's like a little ebook or a video or something on the website that gave us more background so people can understand the changes that happened over the last few decades. Jim.
There's a public comment here. I think it's public comment. It's from Jen Sarin. For public, you might want to do a walkthrough. Sorry, I'm reading feedback. You might want to do a walkthrough, a short 5-minute with 2 people talking about the place. That's presumably where the, what's going to be redone under MSBI.
Oh, absolutely. I think it would have to be something where we gave kind of a preliminary introduction of what's going on and what we see coming down the pike, and then bring in the panel discussion about, where they are with things. So if people are amenable to that, I can reach out to the Brads or whoever else and see if we can get some interest in that in the next couple months. Sandy?
But I think what Jen was talking about is maybe you just walk through the site and say why we're interested.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. And And also, insofar as following up with not-for-profits, I would recommend that we go back and review the footnotes from the consultant.
Yep.
The extra, the rear end pages of that document, because she had discussions with somebody up in Harlem and somebody on the borough president's staff. There were a number of them.
Yeah.
I checked off in the Kanban board that I created for this.
Right. No, I know. We're definitely tracking that. In the borough president's office, we have the task force. So I would most definitely invite other members of that task force and community groups to be part of it. It's just, let's just figure out a few people to be on a panel and then have within the audience, several people who could ask targeted questions, based on their stakeholder engagement in this. I think that would be great. And Jim, I don't know if you were at, maybe it was the last meeting where I did mention that at the last, and you have to watch these videos, Jim, because I want you up to speed on it.
Yeah, I had meant to before tonight, and this week has been.
At the last task force meeting, and so I'm not sure if you got that update, but they basically are rethinking everything. So, and including, the certificate of need at the state level, Department of Health, they're really rethinking the whole downtown transformation, what's going to happen to the hospital, and even on the table now is staying and renovating the existing space. I don't know what the likelihood of that is. I don't think that can happen, given I've seen the space. I have my daughter there. I can't imagine what they're going to do with it. But they said that everything's on the table, and I think maybe even phased sales, other things are on there that they're considering. So something for us to keep.
Well, that's good news, no?
It's good news. Yeah, that's why I just want to continue to stay very engaged in the conversation here.
Yep.
I'll
check it this weekend, I promise.
Okay. So, without taking you through every step we have the task tracker that Letty's set up that I'm going to update. I know it's not a Trello, Jim. We talked about that last time too, and voted on it, and everyone to go kind of old school on it. So we are going to just keep updating that. There are some definite things that need to be done now in terms of outreach. So hoping to get some a one-pager put together description that we can send out to people, as well as getting the pages of the website together, just be able to send things out with a consistent message to our stakeholders. If there's personal outreach we want to do to a few people, we talked about CB3, CB5, and big tenant associations in the area, maybe some religious groups, things like that. We can discuss that as well. But I think we're in a good place that we can really start getting traffic to the site, and then start posting upcoming meetings and events that we're hoping to have. So
are electeds being more engaged on this than they have been?
Well, I mean, there was definitely
Epstein and particularly the state senator from downtown, our former assembly member. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. They were at the meeting, at the task force, at the borough president's task force meeting.
Okay.
Yeah. So everybody is definitely on top of it. I know there was folks from Carlina Rivera's office there as well. So, local and state level are engaged in the conversation, it looks like, moving forward. So I will send out the updated tracker with next steps on it. And is there any thought on having this as a joint committee type of thing? I'm thinking a lot of this has to do with health, a lot of this has to do with housing, and there's other things that we're delving into here. I don't want to step on any toes. I'm happy to share the, opportunity if anybody wants to. So, Wells, did you have something?
Are you recognizing me? Can I speak, Kavitha?
Yes. Sure. Yeah.
So my comment was not directly related to what you just said, but then it kind of is connected. I was thinking about the newsletter, and a way, and also the kind of this PowerPoint idea, this idea of creating some content that can educate the public and educate potential stakeholders and encourage them to get involved in the process in a very specific way, or in a way that's aligned with their particular interests and goals. And maybe it's about, coming up with a series of like topics or themes, and creating like really small kind of bite-sized, like 5-minute modules, of like around that content. That could be a short PowerPoint or a video type of, thing. It could also include links to our meetings, or it could be lots of different content that's kind of aggregated together around a theme. And that could become, the basic outline of a newsletter. The one newsletter could talk about housing and these different kinds of housing. One might talk about public space and,
Right.
and community space, or one might talk about sustainable transportation or wellness, or, so, and then we could plug in our electeds, we could plug in community organizations, we could plug in members of the board, we could plug in these different kind of stakeholders into that type of framework. So, it's kind of just a way of organizing ourselves. And I think what would happen is we would be able to generate some content over time that would aggregate on the website, and be available there long term. But it could be a way for us to kind of focus our outreach in certain areas initially, as we're kind of, building steam. And I think it would also help to be a way to educate ourselves, on some of these topics, dig a little deeper, because it's so broad, but if we can kind of think of a half dozen topics, that we could kind of create these little chapters on, that might be one way of thinking about organizing ourselves and our outreach.
Yeah, I think that would be incredible, because we already are thinking of a half dozen things, right? I mean, we've got so much going on in that one site, impactful. I do think that would be good. And yeah, I see
those folks that worked on the website, you're able to add video pages directly into the website, or do you have, you can link from YouTube, obviously, but can the website support video pages? You know what I'm saying? So if, for example, yeah, okay.
We haven't tried it out, but and Cody may know the answer to this too. But I believe that the format that we're using for the website can host any type of media that we create and put there. It's just not
going to overload it or kill it.
I don't think so.
I have video on mine, but
as we are, since we're using YouTube for these meetings and people can access that there, it might make sense for, maybe there's already a place for it to live and we just link to it. But, or it could be that you have a very short kind of clip of it on the website and you link to the longer video. But as far as I know, yes, it could support that.
Yeah, I think a lot of this is going to be a matter of getting someone to do all of this and take ownership of it. And I played around with the back end of the website too. And I think we're limited. And Cody, I don't know if you checked into that. We were going to upgrade like one level up. That was a very small dollar amount, just to get a little bit more flexibility in what we could do. Because right now we couldn't even like support a slideshow of photos. So if we can't do that, I'm not sure, what it allows for. But perhaps we can look at those options, since this isn't like a ton of, we're not talking about this website going on for a decade or more. It's really now and over the next couple of years that we need to get this stuff going. So beyond that, I think, and Jen, there was in the Q&A, had some suggestions too, in terms of the outreach. In addition to PowerPoint embedded, we could do short, concise podcasts. That's a really great idea. I think interviews and podcasts could be really interesting, especially tapping into people like Claude, who has like the history of all this stuff in the neighborhood, and then maybe responses from electeds and, perspectives from MSBI as well. Be really great. And she mentioned taking the newsletter to take people's questions and answer questions submitted. I don't know if we have a section for open questions. I think we did have something in the comment box in our MailChimp survey, but we'll double check that. And beyond that, I really think, unless you guys have other questions,
Kavitha, did you want to follow through? I think I had mentioned a couple of meetings ago, and you said we wanted to wait until the website was live. You want to follow through and do something with Cranes, New York Business?
I guess.
We had talked about it in the context of the local paper, which I guess now is defunct. But if we're talking about, a general matter of real estate in the city, Cranes is kind of the go-to place. Cranes and the other one, I forget the name of it offhand. Real Deal, I guess it is.
Actually, Town and Village still does publish, but it's real estate. Interesting enough. They
all?
put out an edition, but it's both mainly real estate.
Mm-hmm.
I think I think we should get out in front of all these things. I'm just wondering about the timing and whether we should put that around.
We need more information.
Yeah, I think we should put that around.
You need some substance. If this is going to be the introduction, you need some substance, and that's what needs to be thought out. And that's but just to do some thinking about it. The other thing, I thought that Wells' idea about the pods and the various topics is excellent. And I think that if you would reach out to the other committees, we would get not only an idea of the kinds of interest and questions, but also let us be a little more advanced in reaching out to stakeholders.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely agree. And I'm sorry I didn't call on you, Letty. I saw your hand
That's
up.
okay. I didn't, it wasn't earth shaking. It was not earth shaking.
No, that's a great thought. And that's a good segue for me to get into, I think, get into my chair's report, which is going to be really brief too, but I just want to give you guys a few updates. So we did change the name of the working group. We got official committee status. Thank you, Kyle. I know you're on there somewhere. So we're calling it the Strategic Planning Committee because we really felt that this was an opportunity. This particular group is an opportunity for all the other committees to kind of come together and weigh in on things they want to get done. So I'd love to have representation from people from all of the committees on this if possible. We have one new member today, Asia, who you turned off your video. I know you didn't like your lighting or whatever, but welcome. We're happy to have you here. And I also wanted to announce that Wells is vice chair of the committee now officially. So congratulations, Wells. We'll be working on podcasts and video clips and all these website things together. It'll be very exciting. And I'm trying to see if I had anything else. I'm sorry, it was a crazy day. So my notes are all over the place. If anybody else has anything else to add while I make sure I'm not missing anything.
How are we going to interact? I mean, strategic planning, it just seems, you know what I mean? It seems a bit awkward in terms of land use, which is supposedly charged with planning. That was the committee that was officially charged with doing the charter mandated item of land use issues. So I'm just trying to figure out how this is gonna mesh. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No,
Does that make sense?
We went back and forth. So I'm happy to take feedback on that if there's, if others have issues with the name, because it was really about community planning and it was meant to be that this is a subset of all those other committees, but a way to take action within those without, taking away from obviously land uses. Overarching mission. So I take your comment to heart, Jim. I think it was really hard to figure out what to say, but at the same time, 197A working group, if we're getting out in front of people and reach the public, I wanted to have something that was a little more, community focused. So, we changed the name. I don't know if we can change it again, but I'm open to input.
Yeah, I just concerned that people, outsiders, members of the public might get confused. I have no reason to know one way or another, but I would assume that they might get confused,
Well, Well, maybe we just have to make sure we're writing a definition of what our mission is. That's
We do.
that's clear.
That's a good idea,
right?
yeah.
It's not in
Definitely,
just
yeah.
the name, right? But in how we describe our activities, and that could help avoid
Yeah.
confusion.
So-
Yeah, and
So that's
maybe
what we've done.
say that it's not limited to land use matters.
Right. So that's what we've done. Is we really did keep the 197A, immediately within the definition after that general heading of the name, to be really clear about, what our task is and what the limitations are of this group. Anyone else? No? Okay. Everybody's tired. Any old or new business?
All she wrote. Claude, I sent you that email. Kavitha, you're copied on it.
Okay,
So-
thank you. Thank you for that.
I got it.
Okay, good.
All right, so no hands raised for old or new business, right? Oh, I do. Wells.
And Cody, I think I copied you too. I meant to.
It's not really old or new business, but I just wanted to say thank you so much to Claude. I thought that was very useful and educational. I learned so much from your remarks earlier, and so I just wanted to say thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
I'm
I
already
never understood that stuff.
rewatching it. It's not gonna be just Rich for the minutes. I'm gonna rewatch it too, because I feel like there was so much information in there.
Yeah, I kind of feel like I signed up for an ambitious minutes project after going through this. But
Good luck. We'll
I
help you
think
out.
you should just reference the video, or maybe that's our first podcast, actually. It'd be amazing. We just, edit down that.
Yeah, sure, you can do that.
And
You're
it's-
right. You're right.
I think we should. I think that'd be amazing.
There you go.
Thank you, Claude.
And Rich, as somebody who's done minutes from the video, the easiest way to do it is cast the YouTube video to your TV set.
oh,
And
then
use
it's
your
like I'm
remote
being
control.
here. It's like being here again.
Yeah, well, it's easier. I had to do
Okay.
it for another meeting that I missed while I was sick. So try it, and you can use your remote control to keep the
To save. Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Very good.
All right, with that, I'm gonna ask for a motion to, no other.
So moved. So moved.
Okay, Letty's ready to go.
Second.
60 seconds. Thank you, everybody.
Aye.
Seeing no further business, the meeting is adjourned at,
Night.
8:03 p.m. Thank you so much, everyone.
See ya.
Have a good
Good
night.
night.
Bye-bye.
Hi, everybody.
Bye.